Welcome to Run to the Hills live interviews, and it's a great privilege this evening to have Nicky Spinks. Nicky is a very, very accomplished runner, and during the summer when I was doing these live interviews on my Facebook page, Nicky very kindly came on, but sadly after about 20 minutes we lost the internet. So that was a real shame, wasn't it, Nicky, that we couldn't quite finish off the questions that we had. So we're going to try again, and thank you so much for joining us. So maybe just as people join and we get going, maybe you could just introduce yourself a little bit about what you're doing and maybe how your life is at the moment during this lockdown time or this COVID time.
Well, I'm doing fine. I was just saying that all my races this year have now been postponed, really. I think next year is going to be such a super busy year. But yeah, so I think I've just got into a routine of running with a couple of friends or with a few friends and my dogs. I've got a new collie puppy, so yeah, I've been out a lot with him.
What's his name?
Joss.
All right, okay. Is that after the famous Joss Naylor?
It is, yeah. One day he was, as a puppy, I couldn't decide what to name him, and he was trotting along, and he just turned around and looked at me, and he gave me such a cheeky little grin that I just thought that's just so like Joss. And I haven't met Joss with Joss yet, so that's going to be an interesting meet.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he'll enjoy that. Yeah. Welcome to those that are joining us, and if you have a question for Nicky, then please put them in the comments, and I'll bring them on. And we've got a couple of people straight away. Andy Norman saying hi Nicky, hi John. So people are listening to us and watching us, so that's a good sign. One of the things I'd like to do in this interview, Nicky, is talk a little bit about your double rounds. I think you're well known for having done the double Bob Graham, the double Ramsey, and the double Paddy Buckley. I think the only person who's done all three doubles. And for most people, doing one is a big enough achievement, isn't it? But that was something. So maybe you could just tell us the motivation about wanting to do the double rounds, and was it always the plan to do all three?
No, it wasn't always the plan. I think I thought of the double Bob Graham. Maybe when I read Roger Baumeister's account of his round, the idea went into my head that maybe I could do that, or what a stupid idea. But maybe what would it be like to try and do a double, really? And then when it came around to having 10 years having had cancer, I wanted something to do that was sort of special, longer. Full weekend, and that's when that challenge sort of was right to do it then. And then that actually went, I say it went right. I had my blips in it. I had sort of 4 or 5 hours of feeling horrendous, and the sickness and the feet, just the things that you get when you run for a long time. But I think after I did that, I thought, is the Paddy possible, and is the Ramsey possible in under 48 hours? That was the sort of always the goal, is it possible in that time? And I don't know whether they are or not. I did them, but not in under 48 hours. And once you get over the sort of 48 hours, then I think at that time as well, you tend to you've accepted that it's not going quite to plan, but you've come to terms with whatever is the slowing you down, but you just want to finish. So I'm pleased that I finished all three. I think after I'd done the BG, it was always the plan to do both of the other two, really.
Yeah, and you did those over 2016, 2018, 2019, didn't you? So it was spread out over 3 years.
Yeah, because you think you know something going one way, and I because Roger did it anti-clockwise and clockwise, I think that should be the format rather than just doing 2 clockwise. It should be you have to do one way and one the other. So that's where I went to the Ramsey next, because people had actually done it anti-clockwise. So there was actually sort of information on timings and routes going anti-clockwise. That made it easier to sort of recce. But yeah, it takes a lot of recceing. Especially being in Scotland. Even just doing one recce up there, because it's 7 hours from Yorkshire, it was a lot of work, and that's why I only did one a year, plus the recovery from actually doing the rounds themselves. yeah, the Paddy was obviously easier to recce because I live about 2 or 3 hours away from Wales, but nobody had actually gone anti-clockwise. And I know, well, yeah, I can see why. There's some really horrible bits going the wrong way round, as I say, yeah.
Yeah, and I think with the Charlie Ramsey as well, there's very few road crossings, aren't there? Whereas at least with Bob Graham, you can have someone on the recce's and the event. You can have people regularly meeting you. Whereas I would imagine to recce the Charlie Ramsey is a lot harder, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Especially the sort of central bit where you go from Furset up the top down into the Moors. It's just really hard to. It's like 3 or 4 hours to even get onto the route to recce the route. So yeah, it's really hard to actually get any of the recce's done. I think there were sections of it that I was not exactly winging it, but I'd only been on once. Because obviously you could travel up there and the weather's absolutely foul as well, or snow, so yeah, even when you're there, you're not actually able to do much recceing.
Yeah. Okay, let's maybe just break them down and just have a chat about each one. I've got a couple of photographs from the Bob Graham. So the first one actually is you with Josh Naylor. He came out to meet you, did he? And you did it in 45 hours and 30 minutes. Now, I remember when I was following that, Nicky, that you did it I thought quite an interesting way. It wasn't just a complete round and then you went the other way. You went almost 3/4 of the way round, didn't you? And then went back again, all the way, and then back again. So it was you broke it up slightly differently, didn't you?
Yes, so that's what Roger Baumeister did. But for different reasons than what I think I did it. And when I looked at doing it his way, or initially I was just going to do it one clockwise and one anti-clockwise. But then the timings worked out really better to do it setting off at the same time at midnight and then doing it the same way as he did it and turning round, because otherwise, whichever way else you do it, you'd end up on Scarfell in the dark, or that whole section, Scarfell, Bowfell, all the really high rocky stuff. You'd end up on your second night in the dark, which would be rather, well, very slowing. It would slow you down a lot. So that was my thoughts for doing it the way, and also for helping my support so that they didn't have to drive into Wasdale twice, which is a bit of a trek round for everybody. So. Yeah, and I think also like the traditional legs 4 and 5 are generally the easier legs to do. Again, when you're late, you haven't got sort of massive climbs. It's all on fairly good paths.
Right. So it meant that
quite a few reasons to.
Yeah. So it meant that you finished with legs 4 and 5 on the second round. Yeah,
and also going in a direction that I know better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember watching. There's a great video, isn't there, that was made? Was that by Innovate? Did they? Yeah. It's a really good. And it just gives you a real insight into your tenacity and your willingness to push through, and just being on your feet and being awake for 45 hours. And I would imagine you've been up for a while before you started as well. So do you find sort of sleep deprivation, is that an issue for you, or are you able just to power through?
I found I'm quite good at it. I didn't know that I was going to be good at it, but especially, doing the doubles and then doing the Tour de Geants as well. I've just found that I can actually cope with little amount of sleep. I think some of it is just mental, in that you sort of tell yourself you don't need it, which, I mean, you do, but you can function. And it's also, it's realizing how you function differently. So, beforehand, I would try and make sure that there weren't any hard decisions for me to make about my support or the food or clothes or anything. I'd try and sort of alleviate all of those, all of the decisions that I could. So that people just knew what I needed beforehand and wouldn't have to ask me on the round, because your brain does go rather foggy without sleep.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't think you can actually say you're an expert at it, because it can hit you at different times. You know, it's been different on each of the rounds, how the sleep deprivation sort of affected me.
Yeah. Are you someone who has these little cat naps? I know people talk about having a 10 minutes cat nap and it makes all the difference. Is that something you do?
Well, I'd never had a cat nap or an afternoon sleep or anything before the BG. That's what people say that they really work, but I'd never had one. And so I think I went for too long on the BG, and actually I was needing sleep. And it was one of my supporters, Adam Perry, that actually kept nagging me to have a cat nap. And I was really grateful to him, because when I did have one at 7 o'clock in the morning, then that really helped. I only had 10 minutes and it just really helped power me on the way for the next 16 hours, I think. I
wonder sometimes, Nicky, it's a bit like food, isn't it? If you don't eat, you get to a stage where it's almost too late, isn't it? And I wonder whether it's like with sleep, if you don't take the opportunity and you get into that really difficult bit, then it's almost too late, isn't it? And you're too tired, and then it's a spiral down then, isn't it?
Yeah. So on the Ramsey, when I felt the same, when I felt sort of really rough, and I tried to have two naps on that, and I never slept at all. So I went through 3 nights without any sleep, but it was frustrating because I think that sleep would have helped me. But I think maybe it was the wrong time. And on the Paddy, I think I tried to sleep not early on, after again about 40 hours, and I didn't really get any sleep, I don't think. But then when it got to the night time, I knew I wanted some sleep, and I actually managed to sort of just shut my eyes as I was walking down a track, and actually by the time I got to the camper van, I knew I was going to sleep. And Charmaine said, all I said was, I'm going to have a sleep, and I only got like halfway down, and I was out. She was about to ask me how long I wanted, and I was already out, so she just gave me 10 minutes. So that was a good tactic. I think I used that on the Tour de Geants, actually. Talk yourself to sleep before you get to the bed, and then when you get there, you go straight to sleep.
I love stories as well of people saying, I want an hour, and then so the support team wake them up after 10 minutes and tell them we've had an hour, and that's sometimes if you think you've had longer, that it helps as well.
Yeah.
It
depends why you're having the sleep. Because on the Tour de Geants, I was coughing like really badly after having gone to altitude, and it was really cold, and my chest was really tight. So I actually thought I needed an hour to recover rather than sleep for an hour. My brain didn't need to sleep, but some of my body needed to sleep, and that actually worked as well. So
well, I've just put a photograph on of you finishing. I think you've got your brown with yellow and blue. Is that your club, is it, I assume?
Yeah, that's the Dark Peak vest, yeah.
Right, okay. And you've got a big smile on your face, so I assume that's at the end, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we've done, Nicky, in Run to the Hills in our podcast, we do a little top tip. My co-host Edwina Sutton and I chat about different things, and we talked about emotional finishes a few weeks ago, and about how that at the end of an ultra race, just the emotions that it brings out in you. What about for you at the end of that double Bob Graham? What was the main emotion that you had as you finished that challenge?
I think that's hard to tell, because I think you've been going for so long. I'm never really one for getting like too emotional. I think I was more emotional midway through when I think I wasn't going to finish. So when I do finish, I tend to want to thank everybody that's helped me to get there. And I just think it's a big team effort. And I stayed awake for about 2 hours after that double Bob Graham before I was asleep. So I think, again, if I've put everything into it, I just tend to everything starts to shut down as soon as I've finished, because then I don't need to concentrate on keeping going or what to eat next or how not to sleep and whatever. It was just like, right, my body, I need to sleep now. Straight away. Need to rest. So yeah, it wasn't it. I mean, I loved it. I loved having everybody round and sharing the chips and chatting to Joss and everything. So yeah, I think having everybody round was really special.
Yeah, I think that you talked there, Nicky, about being a team effort, and even though it was you that had to do the double rounds, but the team that you have with you, and I think that's one of the real strengths of ultra running, isn't it, and hill running, the way that people support each other. And I know that you have been a great support to lots of others as well. I was listening to Damien Hall when he was doing his Pennine Way record recently, and he gave you a lot of praise. There was one particular section where he was slipping down, he was losing some of the time he'd gained, and he gave you a lot of thanks, even though he said at the time he wasn't so keen. But is that something that you enjoy doing as well? Is supporting others and helping others?
Oh yeah, I mean, like this year, I think was just going to be full of me supporting other people. I've got a lot of people that supported me. They've got their challenges lined up, and this year was going to be me sort of supporting them, because it gives me a rest. I don't have to focus on the challenge that I'm doing or not doing. You know, I'm not doing one, so I don't have to, because it's quite stressful and everything. So I really love, you know, giving it back, and actually because I know quite a lot, I can really help somebody achieve something that they want. And like Damien saying at times that, oh, well, you know, I don't need to knock 3 hours off. And I was thinking, no, tomorrow you would wish that you had knocked 3 hours off. But because I've been there, I've done that. You know, you're tired and you don't want to push anymore. But actually, I could see he'd got the energy in him. So it was worth it to get it out of him.
Yeah, it was funny when I listened to the interview with him, you know, and he was saying he regretted saying to you that he was slipping, because he realised that from then on that you were a taskmaster and keeping him going. I've also just put a little photo on of you and Damien on the UTMB when he's got number 50. I assume that was the year that was he was fifth, wasn't he? Did he finish fifth that year?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, yeah. I know you supported him throughout that whole race, didn't you?
Yeah. But again, it was only because he wanted to only stop at the checkpoints about 2 minutes or something. I was telling myself at the beginning, you know, I'll only going to see him for 10 minutes, but I can make a difference. And you can by noticing something that the person hasn't noticed is going wrong with it, and noticing it and asking them something and giving them something that they thought they didn't even know they needed. Yeah, you can really make a difference, and that's what I always try and do. And yeah, it was emotional seeing Damien finishing fifth, because at the beginning of the race there was such good top class runners in there. We never imagined that he'd be able to pull it all the way through and keep it going.
And I think because they'd done the film with Summit Fever as well, hadn't they? And it was all set up, wasn't it? And there was, you know, I think to pull it off the way he did was incredible. And again, that's a great film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nicky, we've got some questions coming in, so I think I'd like to look at those. So we've got from Andy Norman. He says, "We love seeing you as the local short cross country runs. Where's the strangest place you've been recognised?" That's an interesting question.
It's probably on a train to Manchester or something like that. Yeah, where I'm stood on a tube and yeah, just, you know, if I'm in Geneva Airport or stood next to the Moot Hall, I almost expect to get recognised because I'm in somewhere where there's lots of Geneva Airport at UTMB time or something like that. But yeah, I think probably on the train, because I wasn't even going anywhere special or anything. So that it's weird like that.
Yeah. And did they come up wanting to talk to you, or just to say hello?
I think so, because they were already stood next to me. So then, you know, it wasn't like they had to come far to actually say, "Are you Nicky Spinks?"
Yeah. Well, I must admit, Nicky, in the summer we had a holiday when we were allowed to. We were at Kynaston, and we went for a walk up Old Man of Kynaston with my wife. And you were on the way down. Do you remember? I think you'd just been up for a photo shoot with Innovate, and it was. But that, I suppose that's I wasn't surprised to see you on the hills in a sense, but yeah. That was.
Although we were all dressed in shorts and t-shirts.
You were. That's right.
It was a photo shoot, and yet the weather wasn't that great. I think we were all quite glad to be coming off the hill at that time.
Yeah. No, definitely. And then we've got a couple of questions about Barkley, because you attempted that last year. So Melissa Montague says, "I'd like to ask, with regards to the Barkley Marathon, what were your survival plans and preparations to deal with getting back to base had you sustained an injury or weather conditions that threatened your safety mid-lap? After all, Laz says that no one is coming to get you."
Well, you just have to be self-sufficient, and a lot of it is very similar to coming out on the hills here on my own. I mean, obviously, when I'm on my own here, I've let somebody know where I am, and I'm carrying probably quite, a few layers. I mean, I didn't carry enough layers at the Barkley, but enough layers to get me down without, getting too hypothermic. And I think that's it. You've always got in your mind which is the quickest way to civilization, whether you head, left off the hill or right off the hill. And basically, you've got to get off the hill. So that's the main thing, to have that idea in your head. So I think that's it really. I mean, you go into the Barkley knowing that you're on your own out there, or you're on your own with your fellow runners, and you tend to team up and make all those decisions together, because that's where you're safer, making stuff together.
Yeah. And was that always a race that you wanted to do? Had it been on your bucket list for a while?
Since 2012, when I did the Dragons Back, and I ran with two American Johns, although one of them was actually an Englishman living in America, but one of them had done 3 loops of the Barkley, and he just said I would be really suited to it, and I'd never heard of it before. So when I got home, I googled it and just thought, actually, this is actually, it's really what I like doing. It's navigating, it's rough, you're on your own, you don't have like loads of namby-pamby checkpoints and things. You basically, it's hard, and then there's a lot of ascent in it, which is something that I'm better at than flat running. So yeah, I thought it would really suit me.
Yeah. And then we've got another question about the Barkley from Mick Brown. It says, "Hello, Nicky. With the experience you gained in last year's Barkley marathons, are you considering a return after this pandemic stuff is all over?"
Well, I hope so, because, I was actually entered this year. It was the week before lockdown. I think I was already not going before we were locked down. But yeah, so it's going to be hard, because your memories, my memory of everything out there is not fading. I'm trying to keep it alive. But if I do get back, I won't have the advantage of it being a recent event that I've just done. So, but yeah, I hope so. I think everybody that's wanting to do it earlier this year, is hoping that we'll all get another chance to have another go at it one day.
Yeah. And it does seem to be, I think all races, you always do better the second year, don't you? Because you've seen experience. But it seems to me with the Barkley, that's tenfold, isn't it? I think because you're not allowed to practice on the route, or the majority of the route. So it's not the sort of race you can recce that at all, is it?
No. And I mean, John Kelly got round, but when he lived out there, and he didn't know the route, he just knew the forest. But yeah, even living in the UK, we're even at a more disadvantage, because we can't even go around the forest. So, but second time round. Yeah,
and it's just one of those races that has just grown in folklore as well, isn't it? I think with Laz and the way he does it, and I think when I first heard about it, there was hardly any information, whereas there's more now, isn't there? But it's still a lot less than any other race that you're ever going to do. But tell me a bit about the road book. That sort of fascinates me. He writes, doesn't he, the description of the route, but it's almost cryptic, or it's not straightforward, is it?
No, it's cryptic and it's got his own little comments in it. So it did remind me sometimes of the Long Distance Walking Association descriptions that, you go down this road for like 3 miles and then on your right there's a church. And then they go off into the history of this church, but it's quite irrelevant to the fact that you need to go down the road for another mile. But it does. So there was lots of this in the descriptions. You just distracts you left and right. There's this, that, and the other. But actually, really, you just need to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the road book for you. So it's about 4 pages long.
Yeah.
The really important bits is like mainly where you get into the area and you need to actually find the tree that your book's hidden behind.
Yeah. And that road book, is that available much before you start, or is it only when you actually start?
No, you get that on the day that you start. You get the book. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but the whole thing about the Barkley as well is that you don't know when you're going to start, do you? So he blows the comps, doesn't he, an hour before, but it can be any time. If it's a 12-hour period, it can be any time.
Yeah.
So again, that I would imagine, just messes with your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it was midnight to midday or 11 o'clock. Yeah, but so we went to bed-ish. Because you never know whether you'd be getting up. You've got an hour from when he blows the conch, so you've got it's enough time to sort of get up and get ready, but you're already ready because you can't not be.
Yeah.
And it was early in the morning, but I don't think I slept very much that night. Because you just want to be off by then. It's like any race, you've got those nerves, and you just want to get going, and then all the nerves go away and you can get on with the race.
Yeah. Was it what you expected it to be, or was it different to your expectations?
Yeah. No, it was because I'd watched films, read blogs, listened to podcasts. Obviously, there's not the photos. There's a few photos that generally old photos because he doesn't let anyone on the route with a camera anymore. So there's a lot of old photos, but. Yes, so they're a bit grainy, but they do give you an idea of what the forest looks like. Yeah.
I was just thinking, Laz has other races as well, doesn't he? His big backyard one, where that's again is fascinating, isn't it? He sets people off every on the hour, and you've got an hour to run the 4 and a bit miles, and then you start again the next hour. Would that be something that would appeal to you?
I don't think so. But then, I didn't think the Barkley would really appeal to me. So you just never know where you might go next. Yeah.
I'm sure, like with Nicky, over the last few years, the amount of different types of races that there are now. I think traditionally there was, so I did my first West Highland Way in 2007. And there weren't that many 100-mile races in the whole country. But over the last 10 years particularly, it's just mushroomed, isn't it? And then they're getting longer and longer, aren't they? There's 150-mile, 200-mile races, a bit more regular now. And there's over a variety of terrain and all sorts. So there's something for everybody now, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't sort of every now and again, I come across something that I've not really sort of like thought about before. Like the 4-mile loops where you just go round and round for 24 hours and see how many you can do. It just, that sort of thing just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think because mainly, yes, it is a physical challenge, but I think it's more of a mental challenge than a physical one because you've got nothing really to look at or to keep you going apart from the fact that you'll lose count of how many times you've been round everything as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and particularly with that one, because there's no end to it, is there? It just keeps on going till one person's left, isn't it? So that
Yeah.
must, you can't plan, can you? In a sense, you just keep on going.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think from what the things that you've done, it's the hills that you love, isn't it? And the more gnarly terrain. So it's things like the Dragon's Back, it's like the Tour de Giants, the rounds, and I think that's your strength, isn't it? And the longer and tougher, that seems to be your forte, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've got to look after yourself, whatever. But I think the longer and where navigation comes into play as well, that's just another sort of aspect of it that's thrown in that you've got to cope with.
Yeah. I've got a few more photos. I'd love to just a quick chat about the Ramsey. I must admit, I've not been on that route much, so I don't know too much about the Charlie Ramsey. I've done some of the tops, but I've never been around the route at all. But I get the impression that it's a lot tougher than Bob Graham, isn't it? Just the terrain.
Both the Paddy and the Ramsey are sort of tougher than the Bob Graham, and I think it's a combination of the fact that it's not as well known, so your supporters don't, you've got to know it more than your supporters, because I think the Bob Graham's got a lot of people that know it, so you can always get support that know it. The Charlie Ramsey, like you said, has only got really one. It's not even a road crossing. You can't get a vehicle to it. It's a mile from the road, so your support still have to carry your stuff in. They usually get eaten alive by midges and or these things called clegs, which are foul, horrible, biting things like horseflies, but they swarm at you. We got a lot of those on my double, which just sent everybody, inside. They were nasty things.
Yeah.
And so there's all that sort of thing, and then obviously the mountains are just higher, and there's no. I think two of the ridges on the Ramsey have paths on them, like the Grey Corries. The Ben Nevis Grey Corries has a path on it, on top of the ridge, and then all the Moors have got paths on. But the central bit that you usually do at night just doesn't have many. It doesn't have paths the way that we go up and down it. You're just bashing through heather and rock for that, which is, a completely different mindset really than your usual following of a path.
Yeah. So on that one, Nicky, did you do a complete clockwise loop and then a complete anti-clockwise loop? Is that the way you approached it?
No, I approached it the same as the Bob Graham because it had sort of worked. So I turned round sort of halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether that was the best way to do it, but I think it would have been okay. I think what happened is because of the lack of support and everything, it was a really hot day and my feet swelled up. And I just suffered in the heat in the end. It was roastingly hot, even at sort of midnight. Throughout the night, we were only in shorts and T-shirts, which is sort of unheard of really in Scotland. And then obviously during the day, I dropped most of my support because they were also really hot and carrying loads of stuff and trying to keep up with me. It was just tough all round for everybody.
Yeah. And that took you 55 hours and 56 minutes. So
yeah,
I assume you were aiming for 48 hours, were you, to try and do both under 24?
Yeah.
So was that a little disappointing, or were you pretty happy with the fact that you got round?
You go through the disappointing bit when you realise you're not going to do the 48 hours, which was actually when I left Fort William going out up the Ben. I lost loads of time going up the Ben. It was really hot. It was only about 8 o'clock in the morning, but it was just roasting. And after that, I just kept losing time. I actually thought that I might be able to pull it back as it got cooler at like 5 o'clock that night. We turned round and it was about 4 o'clock. But it sort of got cooler, but then it also got claggy and rainy, which was just a complete. And then I think because we'd all been so hot during the day that we all then felt the cold in the night, and we didn't really have enough clothes. It was lucky that a supporter had walked into below this ridge called Spinks Ridge before annex, and he had spare clothes. And yeah, we just all wore his clothes to the finish. So, but yeah, I think actually I was just really happy from that moment on, because I knew I could finish. Up until that moment, I was getting a bit worried because I knew I was getting cold, and I knew we were going back up over the Ben at midnight, and it was very unpleasant. We were just so slow, and so yeah, the whole party was sort of not going well. But after we met Joe, it was yeah, it was good. It was quite good fun. My feet hurt, but it was still quite good fun.
Yeah. What about motivation? If you're saying that, you know, obviously you realised that the 48 hours had gone, is it a problem for you to say, right, I'm just gonna finish it rather than just stopping?
I think it was an easier decision on the Ramsey, because even if I'd stopped, I'd still have to have walked out for 4 hours. Yeah. So I think going back and doing 8 hours was actually, yeah, you might as well do the extra 4 and at least you've finished it. Yeah. But I don't think that ever went through my head, actually. No. I just wanted to finish. Yeah. So yeah, on the Paddy, I had a different experience. I sort of did want to call it a do at some point. At that point when it was all going like pear-shaped. And I just thought I was wasting everybody's time again. All my poor supporters had come out again, and here I was, you know, being miserable and grumpy, and then I run it all through my head, and I just thought, well, if they all want to go home, I'll just carry on my own with a rucksack. Yes, yeah, I asked myself the question, do you want to finish? And when I answer it, yes, well, then okay, you've just got to do something to do that then. Yeah. And actually, you need to eat, because that's what the problem was. I wasn't eating, so that's where my energy had gone and everything. So, but, yeah, give myself quite a lot of talking tos and talking offs, and then
I can imagine. But I think that's a big lesson for all of us, because I think sometimes we have a goal, and if that goal slips, and then if you can't sort of realign what you want from the race, it's a downward spiral in your mind, isn't it? And it's easy to quit then. Whereas I think if you can have, you know, that resolve to say, no, even if my time's gone, I still want to finish.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question from Mick again. Actually, Mick Brown. He says, "Hi again, Nicky." He said, "With recent attempts at the Wainwright Challenge this year, would this be a consideration to you? Have you ever thought of doing all the Wainwrights in a one?"
No, I mean, I quite like to go up all the Wainwrights, but not continuously. Yeah, I think that's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe after the Tour de Geants, I can continue going, but I actually thought I wasn't sort of a multi-day person. But no, I don't think I'll be ever going up and down all the Wainwrights continuously.
Okay. Do you prefer something like the Dragon's Back, which is a stage race where you do a certain amount and then you rest and then you go out the next day? Do you prefer that to a continuous race where you just keep on going?
No. Although, yeah, I mean, saying that, if I was going to do anything, I do prefer it when it's just continuous. I mean, I've only ever done the stage race as the Dragon's Back, and then we did the Dragon's Belly, which was just doing it as friends. And again, my feet just swelled up, and I suffered with sort of shin splint type things. So I wasn't sure whether they just they don't like the heat. They do swell up quite a lot in the heat. They prefer being wet and cold.
Probably just as
so
well,
do I.
Yeah. And then just wanted to finish off your doubles. So you finished the double Paddy Buckley last year, and that took you 57 hours 27. But you said that no one's ever done it the anti-clockwise. Is that right?
I think actually I have found about 4 people on Paddy's list now that did it anti-clockwise.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
But it
was so long ago. It was like right at the beginning when people started doing it. So there was no information on it. Yeah.
I've got 1 or 2 photos here. The first one is you walking with your red cap on, and there's a beautiful sunrise or sunset.
Yeah,
that looked beautiful. Did you have decent?
Yeah, that was on Snowdon.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and it was. We got some really nice. We got a mixed bag of weather on the Paddy. Actually, there was a bit of clag and rain thrown in there, but I think the weather forecast was supposed to be a bit like that. So it was one of those. It's hard to decide whether to cancel it or not, but yeah. No, I'm glad we went because actually it was quite cool as well. I don't think I was ever really too hot on that, so that's always pleasant.
Yeah. And then the second photo I've got is you in a camper van with your feet up, and you've got black bandages or something around your knees. Were you struggling a bit? I think you're eating beans on toast as well.
No, I can't remember. I was half undressed. I think those might be my 3/4.
Okay. All right. Okay.
As it going on or coming off. Yeah.
I think it must be fairly further on in the challenge because you look as though you're tired.
Yeah. I just finished one of the rounds because
Okay.
that way I did one anti-clockwise in 20 something or other hours, which I was really pleased to get under the 24 hours, but I was a little bit behind my schedule. But yeah, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning and I was quite warm actually, just having come all the way down into Capel and then jumped into a camper van and started eating food. So I think that's why, yeah, sort of half taken off my 3/4 and then ate more food.
Okay. And then the next one, you're just setting off. I think it must be from the camper van. I assume you're setting off on your second round. There's a couple of dogs in the picture as well. And you're just setting off. So at that point, were you still quite optimistic that you could get round the second one under 24 hours as well?
Probably not. It was definitely going through my head that I wasn't moving as fast. And actually, well, at Capel, I ate all that food and then I threw it all back up again.
Oh,
so that was not great. And then I had to start, and there's a really long leg of about 7 hours, and it's just rather unpleasantly bumpy without being very. You don't feel like you're achieving much. You can't run very fast because it's so bumpy and a bit rough underfoot. So I think I wasn't looking forward to that leg at all. And that's the leg where I just then thought, right, I don't really know what I'm doing this for now. I've had enough. I've got 4 legs still ahead of me. Got a long way to go. But once I figured out in my own head that I wanted to do it, I asked my support for their opinion, which of course they come back and go, well, this, that and the other. I mean, Damien Hall actually turned around to me and said, you'll only come back and do it all over again. So it's easier to carry on and finish it than to do what you've all done, the 36 hours you've already done to get to this point again, just to have to do what you think you can't do. So it's that sort of reasoning that, just keeps you going. I mean, I knew he was right. I knew I was so stubborn that I would just come back and do it again. So, and then once I started eating food, and I really actually, enjoyed the last 3 legs. Once you could sort of knock a couple of legs off. Actually, I had a sleep. That's what I did. That I had another leg after that, and I was a bit wobbly. It was getting dark. I was getting that sort of tunnel vision with your head torch where you get a bit zombified. But the sleep really helped. That was, and then we had the Snowdon leg and the Llanberis leg and the Capel leg. So,
Well, thanks for sharing those because I think it's an amazing achievement to do all 3 on 3 doubles. I think people who've done one of them or parts of them will have an idea of what it's like, the terrain that you moved over. So congratulations on all those. And just wanted to finish, maybe just tell us a little bit about the Tour de Giants, because that is a fascinating race, isn't it? It's a long in the Alps, isn't it? And it's just it seems an amazing. Again, people I've known who've done it. Some of the pictures, it just looks at an amazing route. So again, maybe tell us what your motivation for wanting to do that one and how did it go?
Well, I sort of heard about it years ago, but I didn't think that I'd ever be able to do that distance. And then sort of it's about 4 or 5 days depending on how fast you can go. And I was talking to Paul Tierney on another Innovate photo shoot, and yeah, he just raved about it because I think he's done it maybe twice or three times then. So then last year I entered it and got a place, and yeah, I absolutely loved it. So I was entered again this year, but they really tried to run it, and I mean, obviously they couldn't run it. It was September, it would have been, and but yeah, it's such a shame that it had to be postponed again. So next year I'm in it again.
Right.
But yeah, I love the route. It was really remote. There's not that many competitors in it, so you do feel like you're more on your own. It is marked, but you have to keep your wits about you because it's not sort of as well marked as like the UTMB every sort of 10 meters or something. So yeah, and I just love because a lot of the checkpoints are just refuges up in the mountains where you don't really know what you're going to get, and then you open the door and they're all these friendly people and they're serving, and the checkpoints don't have the same food, so it's a bit of a surprise. You never really know what you're going to get, so it just depends what that refuge is actually serving up, whether it's ravioli or this stuff called polenta, which is like mashed potatoes. But yeah, it's all really good, but yeah, it's totally different than sort of the other European races that I've done. And then the sleeping, yeah, you can't sleep on the course, but you can sleep anywhere in the refuges or in the main checkpoints. So yeah, getting my head around that, and I think my sleep sort of strategy worked. I went through the first night and then had an hour on the second night, an hour on the third night, and then 10 minutes at a refuge the next day. And that was it. I think I had 3 hours in total from Sunday to Friday. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and you finished that.
Yeah, I really want to go back. I could.
Yeah.
Hey?
You finished that in 106 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And you were 10th lady. Is that right?
Yeah, joint 10th. Yeah.
Yeah. So was that someone you ran in with? Did you know them, or you just joined together?
No, it was about the third day. I was toing and froing with a woman, and her name's just slipped. You haven't got it there?
No, sorry.
Yeah. I was toing and froing with an American woman, and eventually I realised that, we were it was getting dark actually, and we were basically the only two people that we'd seen for about 6 hours. So it just made sense to sort of pair up a little bit. And eventually she started sort of talking to me, and yeah, we paired up through that night, which was a good thing because, I mean, she descended faster than I did and I climbed faster than she did. So we were really well matched. She kept wanting to sleep and I just kept wanting to eat. So we sort of, while I ate, she slept. So it worked really well.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So next year, then you've got Barkley and you've got Tour de Giants. They're the two main things, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
COVID allowing and all the rest of it.
I know. Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on with those. And I'm aware that it's coming up to 8 o'clock, and I know you've got another meeting, haven't you, at 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Nicky, for tonight. It's been lovely just to chat to you, and I'm glad the internet stayed on for the whole session as well. And there's been a number of people watching us, and then hopefully people will watch it as well in the next few days. So thank you very much. And we wish you all the best for the rest of this year, and particularly for next year as you tackle these big events. And we look forward to seeing how you get on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.